In the pale heat of northern Iraq, where wind moves like breath across crumbled stone, a team of archaeologists brushed away history. Dust gave way to form. Clay hardened under centuries of silence. Among broken relics and scorched earth, they found something odd. A tablet, small, unassuming, buried beneath layers of ash and time. But it hadn't eroded. Not like the others. Its surface was smooth, unmarred by age or environment, as if it had been fired yesterday. No visible water damage, no wind scoring, no chemical decay. The artifact was tested 5 times across 3 labs. The result was always the same. Dated to 650 BCE, yet showing no sign of temporal wear. It shouldn't have survived like that. But it had. The script was standard Akkadian, cuneiform wedge marks etched in firm rows. But the message wasn't standard at all. There were no records of kings, crops, or taxes. Instead, it listed numbers, intervals, symbols for stars, and what looked like magnetic fields. A researcher noted phrases that shouldn't exist in that era. Sky reversal, ocean pulse, year of twin sun, descent of black wind. Most dismissed it as metaphor. A poem maybe, or prophecy. The kind ancient cultures used to dramatize eclipses or comets. But one linguist ran the lines through a multi-language neural model trained on both historic texts and modern scientific terminology. The model didn't interpret the writing as poetry. It categorized it as forecasting. A different kind of forecast. The entries weren't random. They mirrored real events. Floods that swallowed Mesopotamian plains, solar flares recorded in modern isotopic rings, volcanic darkness in 536 AD. All described ahead of time, with accuracy far beyond chance. That was alarming. But what followed was worse. The final entries on the tablet didn't describe the past. They described a time yet to come. A magnetic pulse strong enough to make birds fall from the sky. A double eclipse in the year of 2 springs. And then, a phrase that didn't quite translate, rendered loosely as, the turning of the deep eye. The linguist, unsure, cross-referenced that phrase with old Babylonian star records and found it once before, associated with a dark patch near Sagittarius A*, the black hole at the center of our galaxy. Suddenly, what seemed like ancient mythology began to whisper a different possibility. That this wasn't a record from the past, but a message through it. Time, recorded not as a straight line, but as a cycle, a recursion, a memory embedded in clay, waiting for a moment of recognition. Back in the lab, the researcher looked again at the tablet, now resting beneath cool white lights. There, beneath a line of faded characters, was something subtle, nearly invisible under natural light. A groove, not etched by hand, a vibration line. When mapped, it showed a familiar curve, a wave pattern, an echo, and when they layered that curve over Earth's current geomagnetic anomaly maps, it matched. The artifact wasn't just a tablet. It was a time capsule from a mind that understood a system we hadn't yet grasped. A warning disguised as a relic. A voice from a civilization that had either guessed right about the future or somehow remembered it. That night, the wind returned across the dig site, whispering against sand and scaffolding. The tablet lay sealed in a climate-controlled vault. But the question left behind hummed in the bones of everyone who saw it. How did they know? And more importantly, what else did they write? There's a quiet hum beneath the fabric of the universe, and some say it repeats, not in sound, but in structure. In the weeks following the tablet's discovery, the research team partnered with astrometric historians and archival observatories. What began as an archaeological puzzle soon spread across disciplines. Because if the tablet was right about the past, it might be right about the stars too. The reference to sky reversal and twin suns had triggered something. A memory buried in old sky charts. A radio observatory in Chile pulled data from a century ago, scanning for irregularities in pulsar activity and deep field anomalies. And there, tucked between waves of galactic noise, was a repeating flare pattern from a binary star in the Horologium constellation. It was strange. Not the flare itself, but the timing, the sequence of pulses when mapped onto Earth's timeline, aligned not with astronomical cycles, but with historical ones. Each major burst mirrored a year of sudden cultural upheaval. The fall of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the eruption of Krakatoa, the 1918 flu, each marked by this subtle astrophysical echo. A skeptic might call it coincidence, but when researchers superimposed the sequence over projected data from the James Webb Telescope, they found the next pulse was already beginning. The cycle was not only known, it was continuing. The stars were repeating themselves. The language of prophecy was no longer metaphor. It was pattern recognition. At the Max Planck Institute, a physicist ran the star map through a chaos model, expecting nothing. Instead, the simulation showed brief intervals, pockets of order within apparent randomness, like gears turning beneath a chaotic clock. If these were just stars, how could they track the rise and fall of human history? Unless the stars weren't reacting to us. They were involved. One theorist proposed an idea so old it was almost forgotten. That time wasn't just linear or circular, but folded. A kind of cosmic origami, where certain folds in space-time repeated cosmic configurations. Not in exact motion, but in echo. Events mirrored themselves not because they were destined, but because the environment around them curved into that repetition. The ancient Babylonians once tracked the heavens not by mass, but by memory. Their ziggurats weren't just temples. They were sky mirrors, and on one of their surviving tablets, written centuries after the first artifact, there was a symbol, a series of concentric arcs surrounding a central void. It matched precisely a gravitational lensing image taken just last year from the Hubble Deep Field. The patterns were ancient, but they were also current. And then came a final anomaly. An intern at a satellite relay station in Canada noticed something odd during routine data calibration. One image from an automated infrared telescope showed not a galaxy, not a nebula, but what appeared to be a fingerprint. Not literal, but something shaped like it. A swirl of heat, light, and dust configured in a way that resembled a human whirl. An identity mark. When reverse processed for spectral clarity, the coordinates resolved into a star formation that shouldn't exist. Too symmetrical, too local, almost artificial. The system flagged it, labeled it echo structure, unconfirmed origin. The intern joked it looked like a cosmic signature, a name written in heat. The senior analyst didn't laugh. Back at the archaeological site, now dormant under scaffolding and silence, the original tablet remained sealed in its nitrogen casing. But when the artifact was briefly re-examined during a cataloging shift, something new had emerged. Under infrared, a secondary etching was visible. Faint, recursive, coiling inward like a spiral staircase. One researcher, sleep-deprived and slightly amused, muttered that it looked like a galaxy. Another shook her head. "It's not a galaxy," she whispered. "It's a map, a loop, a moment, repeating itself." The stars weren't simply lights in the dark. They were entries in a record we didn't know we were keeping, and someone, or something, had been reading them longer than we had language. Across the ages, from ziggurats to satellites, humanity has lifted its eyes skyward. Not to conquer, but to understand. And yet, the moon remained. A witness, unmoving, silent, etched into every language, painted onto temple ceilings, tracked through calendars and tides. We named our months after it. We bled our myths into its glow. What startled the researchers now wasn't the moon itself, but how often it had been referenced in prophetic texts, without ever being the object of prophecy. It was the frame, never the subject, the fixed point against which time seemed to move. The archives revealed something more unsettling. Hidden within a 17th century manuscript from Eastern Europe, penned in symbols and ciphers later attributed to visionary trance, was a lunar diagram, perfect in its geometry, with notations that matched modern orbital decay models. Centuries before such data existed, the moon, it seemed, had been charting us. From the collapse of Babylon to the firestorms over Hiroshima, the moon was always visible, aloof, pale, untouched. Ancient skywatchers in Mesoamerica believed eclipses were the moon drinking the blood of war. Greek philosophers wrote of its indifference, yet kept returning to it. Chinese astronomers recorded its phases during political transitions, believing its shape to reflect the health of the dynasty. It watched empires fall, kings crowned, slaves freed, and cities burned. And it never blinked. In the 1960s, when humanity finally touched it, there was celebration. A boot print, left on regolith, marked our arrival. But for all the fanfare, something odd happened. The lunar seismometers deployed by the Apollo missions recorded echoes. Not tremors, not natural quakes. Echoes, vibrations that returned, long after the event that caused them had passed. NASA called them moonquakes, but one physicist suggested a different theory, buried in a quiet technical report, that the moon rang faintly like a bell. Not because it was hollow, but because it remembered. If the stars repeated themselves, the moon preserved. In one segment of the recovered tablet, the moon was described as the archivist. Not a god, not a light, but a vessel of memory. It had no language of its own, but it held fragments of everyone. In Inuit myth, the moon was a keeper of souls. In Hindu epics, it stored elixirs and curses. In old Hebrew texts, it was tied to rebirth cycles and judgment. Each interpretation, radically different, yet always centered on the same idea: observation, storage, stillness, a discovery made near the Sea of Tranquility, long after Apollo, added to the mystery. An orbiter scanning beneath the lunar surface detected an area of unusual density beneath the basalt plain, a zone that absorbed radar, but didn't reflect it, as if space itself was bent slightly inward. A hollow? A chamber? No one followed up. Funding shifted. Interests moved on. But recent satellite flyovers returned high-resolution imaging that revealed faint discolorations. Crater edges too smooth, dust patterns subtly shaped, as if rearranged over time. It wasn't conclusive, but it was suggestive that something on, or in, the moon might be responding. The linguistics team returned to the prophetic text, searching for lunar mentions in alignment with known celestial events. An eerie pattern emerged. References to the eye that sees all spiked during solar eclipses. Not just poetic metaphor, but actual increases in recorded prophecy during those years. And in some cases, word-for-word repetition of visions across different cultures and centuries. Identical dreams, identical warnings, all triggered by the moon shadowing the Earth. One phrase appeared in 12 distinct civilizations, always tied to lunar observation. What watches above shall one day awaken below. It had no origin, and yet it persisted. The moon, it seemed, was more than symbolic. It was archival, not just of data, but of moments. It held the psychic dust of Earth's ages. And as the present era accelerated, with wars streamed in real time and skywatchers replaced by satellites, the moon did not change, but it still watched. The moon is leaving us, not in a sudden act of escape, but in the quiet, mathematical certainty of motion. Every year, it drifts away by 3.8 centimeters, a pace so gentle it's almost a whisper. But it is a whisper we've measured, a whisper we can't stop. Astronomers have simulated the future. They've charted centuries ahead, millennia beyond memory. And in each version of Earth's long tomorrow, one constant remains. The moon does not stay. It's our stabilizer. The reason Earth's axis doesn't wobble like a drunk star. The reason seasons have rhythm. The reason tides breathe in and out. And as it moves away, those rhythms break down. Not in apocalypse, but in erosion. Like a song slowly losing its key. Somewhere in the far future, there will be no more eclipses. No perfect alignment. No shadow cast across the sun. The moon will become a distant relic, smaller in the sky, its pull weaker on the seas. Then, it may reach a point where gravity loosens its grip, and it could go freely into the dark. Or it might return, slowly spiraling back in, not as a moon, but as a stone falling home. A final orbit decaying into one last embrace. A death spiral not of vengeance, but of reunion. Either way, Earth will be changed. Climate will shift. The oceans may fall into stillness. Life will have adapted, or it will have vanished. Humanity may be gone entirely. Our cities eroded, our satellites cold, our names no longer spoken. But the moon will still carry the echoes. The dust will remember footprints. The regolith will remember heat. The silent surface, scarred by time, watched by no one, will still hold the imprint of touch, the ghosts of laughter inside pressure suits, the faint signatures of radio transmissions long faded. If some intelligence ever finds it, drifting, cracked, aimless, it will find not just rock but memory, a capsule of all we once were. Not because we stored data inside it, but because it watched us store ourselves into time. In this final frame of the cosmic time-lapse, Earth is a memory, and the moon a traveler. It does not orbit anymore. It drifts into forever.